Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Shipyards. I'm Commander Exorcist, and welcome to another episode of the After Action Report, my weekly show where I go over the news and happenings in the Space Engineers universe. Before we get started, if you enjoy the content that I create on this channel, then be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure that notifications are turned on so that you don't miss any of my Space Engineers content. Let's see what's going on out there. We're 2 weeks post-release of VS 1.5 in Space Engineers 2, and mods continue to flood into the Steam Workshop, creating new building opportunities and bringing classic features from Space Engineers into the new game. Because of our proximity to the recent update, there is very little news for us to take in this week. In fact, it's one of the quietest weeks we've had in a while. Other than the dev diary, which we will get into in a moment, on Tuesday, Keen published a handy 2-minute overview of the SC2 survival production chain, and on Wednesday, a narrative guide for creating modded skyboxes in SC2 on the official Space Engineers YouTube channel. The supply chain video is an excellent primer for anyone wishing to know more about Keen's vision for the flexibility of refining and crafting in SC2. In the proposed survival block, engineers will have the choice between building standalone refineries or using their backpacks to craft basic materials necessary to survive in planetary environments. Steady game progression unlocks new blocks like the smelter and the gear forge, which allow the engineer to build more advanced projects. Coincidentally, you can find the same overview in After Action Report number 5 here on the channel, and you'll find a link to that video as well as the crafting overview and skybox modding guide in the description below. Thursday's dev diary brought about some exciting new details about the upcoming changes to combat in SC2. According to Merrick, discussions about SC2 Combat are still largely in the planning phases, with much of the team evaluating combat in SC1 to identify pain points that can be refined to improve the combat experience in SC2. Currently, the new combat system is being developed around these key points. Longer and more tactical engagements where fights are measured in minutes, not seconds. For anyone who has carelessly charged headfirst into battle in SC1, the thought of having a chance at victory without your ship being one-shot by some overpowered fighter the size of a Nissan Altima would be a welcome change. The diary mentions that players who scout, build defenses, and prepare ambushes should be able to generate an unfair advantage over their opponents. While I agree with the concept in principle, I disagree with calling it an unfair advantage. In my opinion, military combat in video games is typically oversimplified and often neglects the importance of scouting, preparation, and defense. It will be interesting to see what kind of tower defense games the community comes up with for this principle. A rock-paper-scissors approach to combat balance promises that differing playstyles can be effective in certain combat scenarios. While the idea of combat balance is welcome, I'm not sure how reliable a randomized system like this will be for warriors in SC2. The balance changes also include support for both defensive and attack-style players, opening the door for a variety of new PvE and PvP combat scenarios. In the rock-paper-scissors dynamic, the proposed layout is as follows. Aimed and/or manual weapons beat automated turrets beat rockets and/or missiles, and rockets and/or missiles beat aimed weapons. And being that this is Space Engineers, if Keen doesn't offer a rock-paper-scissors lizard Spock option, it will be an opportunity most illogically passed by. The concept of combat scope was also discussed in a brief commentary on the need to differentiate and balance player versus grid combat. The developers are evaluating whether SC2's combat scenarios should play primarily like a first-person shooter or more like an engineering-driven grid encounter, aka vehicle-to-vehicle. This includes the idea of engineers boarding and capturing enemy starships, combat-focused suit upgrades, and new tools dedicated to sabotage, infiltration, and even talk of shields. Finally, the current plan for safe zones in SC2 is to make them slower to set up, more expensive to maintain, and limited in size and availability as compared to Space Engineers. Tension and danger will be the name of the game, as these limitations aim to prevent players from building massive stockpiles with little threat from outside forces. Of course, these features will likely be moddable and customizable. All of this is subject to change in the final version, but it will be interesting to see how the next generation of Space Engineers Combat evolves from these initial design points. So what do you think of the flexibility pathway for crafting in SC2? Are you a seasoned Space Engineers Combat vet looking to sink your teeth into new SC2 combat scenarios? What do you think of the new world where safe spaces are at a premium? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll be back next week with more Space Engineers. Until then, I'm Commander Exorcist. Take care, fly safe, and I will see you out there.